My favorite interview probably of all time, I think, was when I brought the bloody jacket out on TBS after Paulie had conked me the previous week over the head with a cell phone and I bled when the original Midnight interfered. And probably my favorite one just because it worked ridiculously well and better than it ever had a right to, because it almost like the studio audience worked with me when they were already chanting for me before I was officially turning, and I had to hold my hand up and say, hold on, I got more shit. And they just shut the fuck up, right? Because they were listening to, that was good. My favorite interview of any wrestler of all time, my God, the whole Dusty Rhodes, Ole Anderson turn show, either Ole's interview or Dusty's interview.
Yeah.
Whether, I mean, that, of course, so many things involving Jerry Lawler that I can quote, and Bolin can too, verbatim from TV in 1976, but we don't remember what we had for lunch yesterday at Carrabba's. It's just so hard to pick something like that.
The Jerry Lawler interview I've appreciated more and more ever since Memphis Heat came out, because they framed it so well, was the one when he was laid up and he said, listen, Hart, it may take a year, whatever it'll take, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get you. Like that one, where he's not in the studio, where he's at home, but with the music behind it and the way they framed it and the whole story, it's better than ever for me. And the one I don't like is the one with Jackie Fargo, where he calls Jimmy Hart, you stink, you little stink, you stinky stink. Thought that was interesting.
Well, two things. One, Jackie had probably had a late night the night before. And secondly, he was probably anxious to get back to his place of business, especially if it was tournament season.
Did Jackie have more interviews from his couch on Memphis TV than any wrestler?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was hard in the later days. It was hard to get Fargo to come out and actually, associate with the common folk when he was the king of off-track betting, shall we say. But no, I mean, it costs money to get, but at the same time, that's what Jackie Fargo meant to the show, is that if Jackie Fargo did an interview with a camcorder sitting on his living room couch and mailed it in, it was more impactful sometimes than if some schmuck was in the studio live, because it was Jackie fucking Fargo. Oh my God, Jackie Fargo. We got to hear what he's going to say. Shit.
Yeah, and the Ole interview, I look at it as an entire segment where you have the Ole interview, the Dusty interview, the Ivan Koloff interview, and then him and Gordon doing commentary of the turn. That may be the best thing in wrestling history, quite frankly, just because it's peak Ole. Ole is so good there. There's a couple of lines where the fans are chanting, we don't want to hear it. He goes, well, you're going to hear it.
Yeah, you're going to hear it. You want Dusty, you want Tommy, you want Wahoo, you don't know who you want.
And then, who was it? Was it Walter Johnson who was walking away? I forget. Maybe not Walter Johnson, but someone was walking away when Ole's walking in.
Was that Otis Sistrunk that time?
I may have been earlier than Sistrunk.
Or Ernie Holmes.
Ernie Holmes, yes. And Ole's walking in as he's leaving, and he goes, you're going to get it, Ole. And he just goes, not from you. Yeah. That whole segment is one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest.
That was the perfect example of how to be just a surly heel, not a crazy man, or not a chicken shit heel, or not the category is surly heel. And another one, now that we're talking about it, there was one of the great on microphone performances of all the history of professional wrestling. The argument between Lawler and Valiant in the studio in Memphis when Wayne Ferris came out and got involved, and Dundee was trying to break them up, and they did all that off the top of their head, and it was one of the more convincing arguments I've ever seen in my life.
One of my favorite ones you did, and I don't hear it heralded enough, is from Smoky Mountain.
Well, let's herald that motherfucker then.
When you finally had enough of Bob Armstrong and you exposed that Dixie Dynamite was his son. That's maybe, if that's not your best promo ever, that's top 5.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I will now elevate it on my official list due to your feedback there. But no, that was, and then that's the thing. It was everybody involved, because I revealed that I'll tell you who Dixie Dynamite is. Dixie Dynamite is none other than Scott Armstrong, Bob Armstrong's son. He's so ashamed of his old man that he wears a mask to hide his face. because he's ashamed of that old cow. And then here comes Armstrong or Dixie, and he pulls the mask off and throws it down. And he says, I don't hide my face because I am ashamed of my father. I hide my face because I love my father, and I don't want people thinking that he's giving me any kind of favoritism and blah, blah, blah. And then here comes Bullet Bob, takes the clip-on tie off, and we're ready to go. And fuck, that was fucking fun.
That was one of the best ones.
And, all you have to do is just, it needs to make sense, and you don't need to prepare more than a way for it to go and get out of it at the end, really, and have an argument with people. Just tell a fucking story. When you write things and try to perform them, in that argument I mentioned with Valiant and Lawler, Mark James actually in one of his recent books transcribed it and typed it out verbatim. And you come to find out that most of the shit that Jimmy Valiant said made no fucking sense whatsoever as English on paper. But when he and Lawler were screaming at each other in each other's face and blah, 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 you were like, oh, fuck, I can't believe he said that.
Jimmy Valiant never made sense. I recently put up a video from, if not the first, one of the first Jerry Lawler shows from the fall of 1983. And the question from the fan was like, what kind of food does Jimmy Valiant like to eat? And they cut to Jimmy Valiant. He's just, what kind of food do I eat? I don't know, but I think if Watergate happened again, Nixon would do it the same way. It's like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And I know maybe some of the younger folks are out there. This is the first program. It's an infant program. Maybe we got younger listeners who think, wait a minute. Are you guys attempting to explain to us that they didn't always write out the wrestling interviews on paper and that the guys didn't always go over every word they were going to say before they went out on camera? And the answer is yes. That's what we're trying to tell you.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that Lawler and Valiant, for this 6 or 7 minute promo segment that ends in some violence and blah, 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 and is the involvement they had with each other was they said, Handsome, we got a tag title match, but you want to make it a 6-man. We don't want you in the 6-man because we want to win the belts and shave the manager's head. So when we don't want you in the 6-man, you get mad at me and accuse me of being jealous of you because you're more popular, and I'm going to yell at you, and then we'll say whatever the fuck, and that's when I slap you and you hit me, and off we go, right? That's all they would have said beforehand, because if they'd said the shit, then when they went out and said it for the first time on air, it wouldn't have the impact of actually sounding natural because they would have rehearsed it instead of saying it for the first time out there. It's not that hard to figure out.
And it was live TV, important to point out.
Yes, so you weren't going to get a second chance at it anyway.
I'll tell you, the best promo I ever saw live was August 94 New Jack at the Night of Legends in Knoxville. That was like mind-blowing because I had never seen him before. I'd been reading about him in The Observer. Most of the smart fans with me for Fan Week, I don't think had actually seen him yet. And we had heard his name the year before. He had wrestled in Memphis with Mark Freer, the homeboy. And then like the name wasn't there. And then all of a sudden he's working for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And a lot of us knew who Mustafa Saeed was because he had done jobs on TBS for a couple of years. But New Jack gets in the ring and it was like, within a minute, it was like, this guy's one of the greatest promos I've ever seen. And it just got better and better and more believable.
Yeah. And JR was the one interviewing him. And I told JR, I said, he's going to have your hat strapped on, JR, because he's going to blow your mind. Right. And Jack didn't stop from start to finish until he got his point across and all those guys out. He brought all his friends and a couple of them had their hands stuck in fucking paper bags, which I'm told is a sign in the hood that you might have something else besides a bottle in there. And they took over the Coliseum and people were going, what the fuck? That was a pretty strong debut interview.